Welcome to Week Gen Z.
Focused on young adults in the Northwest
And their careers in a post-pandemic world. Fancy yourself a successful entrepreneur?
We talk to local star entrepreneurs, finding out how they got to where they are.
And what they learnt along the way.
How's it going, Sean?
Hi, how are you?
Who or what inspired you to start your own business?
I don't think it was a who, it was more a what. I've been a gamer since Pong, you know,
A
when I was in
classic.
Atari back in the day. And it was purely by happenstance that I met a couple of like-minded people. I was working in an engineering consultancy. I fell in with this guy and his brother who were actually developing some technology for the creation of games, and that's how it kind of all kicked off. So it kind of evolved fairly organically from there. I had my full-time job, but then I started doing this hobbyist stuff, and it just kind of exploded.
Naturally sparked an interest. What sort of challenge did you face when you first started your business?
There's been a couple of starts, a couple of stops, a couple of explosions. I'll go to this iteration of myself with Hypixel Studios. We came from a kind of hobbyist background in that as well. It was professionalized, though it was a little, kind of level up from what kids would do when they're modding games and things like that. But we had to kind of get the with all that passion and all that kind of familiarity with everybody around you, it came a certain kind of looseness, right, that wouldn't have propagated into a kind of a more product-driven sort of reality. So one of the hardest things I had to kind of deal with was the fact that I was no longer people's friends. I was the boss, and I had to, especially as a team scales up. Like we went from I think it was about 10 or 15 people at the start, and now there's over 70. So those kind of familiar relationships that I had formed and were really kind of crucial to our early days, that trust. It didn't fall away. It's just changed. I can't be
Very
that to
professional.
exactly. I can't be that to everybody. It's just too difficult. Too much of a human tax, I believe.
What is the biggest mistake you've made since starting your business, and what did you learn from it?
The biggest mistake I've made is trying to maintain those relationships in that way, because it had become very, very difficult. I was actually given some advice by a producer. We were going through a diligence process over in the States before our acquisition. And a very wise lady took me aside and said, "Look, I can see the relationships you have with these people, and it's really heartwarming, but you can't be their papa forever," which I vehemently disagreed to, right? But she was absolutely right, and that caused a lot of pain, not just for me, but also for the staff. My attachment kind of hurt them as much as it hurt me, So
Uh,
yeah, lesson learned.
who's your business hero or role model?
I thought about this, and I wouldn't put a finger on anybody. I'm from Northern Ireland, right? And there's this thing that some people have here, this kind of chip on your shoulder, right? Especially when you're talking about anything to do with kind of international kind of operations at all, where you might, like, and I've done this myself, you might come into a conversation and say, "Oh, I'm only from Northern Ireland." It's a nonsense. I am a firm believer, advocator, and supporter of anybody who has the courage to kind of lift their head above the pulpit and kind of put themselves out there and have the courage to actually start something themselves. It's a life less ordinary. And you can easily go to kind of the big operators in this world and point the finger, go, yeah, that person's very inspired. And that's fair enough. But I kind of look to more of a grassroots level. Anybody who's willing to kind of put their neck out there and believe in something that they do and they have passion for, then they should be applauded for it. That's kind of where I get my inspiration.
100%. And what's the best thing about working for yourself?
About working for myself, but very to say I can just swan off when I want. You can't. The best thing about working for yourself is kind of the realization that you have, in my case, I suppose, the careers of so many young aspirant people in your hands, right? And that you have a duty of care to them. No matter how detached you get, that is something that kind of weighs heavy on, but you can live vicariously through it. As I've progressed through my career, I was the person who made things in game agents and was the person who created the content, and now I'm the person who's guiding the company that creates that effort. And I live vicariously through those efforts, and really enjoy just what they do.
Bringing people through and all that.
Exactly.
What qualities do you think a business leader needs to have?
I right. In order to be successful in business, I think full stop. There's three things in any product or service or whatever you're doing in your business, right? Needs to have. You need to have your product or your service, right? So hopefully it's something that you're passionate about, or you have a great ingrained sort of knowledge and memory of, or you know it inside out. That's the first thing. Secondly, you need a team to deliver it, right? You need to be able to have the skill to put that team together, not just kind of pick people. It's easy. It's easy to recruit people
Uh,
usually, but it's difficult to recruit the right people who can get on board with the vision for what you have in the product. So the vision of the product and what it is, or the service and what it is, the people. But most importantly, right, these two can exist and they can be fantastic. It can be 10 out of 10. But the third point is knowing the market and knowing if one exists, right? And being inside that and knowing that, right? Because if this isn't there, then you could have the best people in the world, you could have the best idea in the world, but if the people don't exist, you have nothing. You don't have anything.
Get out somewhere to put it. How did you overcome any doubts that you had when you were starting your business?
I've been very lucky in that. There's always when I'm talking to students, I always have a piece of advice. It's kind of evolved over the years, and it's either do what you're good at or do what you love. If by happy coincidence they happen to be the same thing, you'll never work a day in your life, right?
Uh,
That's not exactly true. Caveat that by talking about stuff, other things later on. There's a passion tax that I believe that everybody has. That if you're working on something you're passionate about, you work harder, you work longer, you'll sacrifice more for it. But can I get back to your question? I've kind of actually the question's going completely out of my head. So rephrase it, please.
how did you overcome any doubts you had when you started?
Sorry, I know where I went now. So um, I've been lucky in that I have been very passionate about what I do, right? And passion is it's an unending source of fuel. It's very difficult to extinguish the fire that's created by it, you know.
Huge
And
motivator.
huge motivator, and when you then surround yourself who are like-minded and are willing to go through the more attritional times with you, um, you shore each other up, right? Especially at the start, especially when you're just forming your ideas and what your business is going to be. If you have if you have the skill to kind of get people around you who are going to believe in your vision, believe in what you're trying to do, then they will help you. And like the hardest thing in the world is that first step, I think, right? The hardest thing in the world is kind of to go, right, I've got this idea, and then a million questions run in your head, a million questions. Well, how do you do this? How do that? Just put up your hand and ask, right? There are resources here in this country to help you. And you can get a lot of for free. So, it's just having that a bit of self-belief, passion helps with that. But yeah, putting your hand up and asking for help is probably the first thing I would do.
100%. Did you have to make any sacrifices when starting your business?
It's a continual sacrifice when working in an industry you're passionate about, and that's time. Um, it's very easy to let things slip in that regard. There was a guy, well, wise man told me, told me, family, successful career, and a pastime that you really enjoy. Pick two. You know, it's a little more complicated than that. If you, especially if you're responsible for something, if you're part of the kind of the leadership group of any endeavor, it's very easy, as my phone just dings with another message for me, to get sucked back into kind of additional work or believing that you have to be there all the time. Part of the skill of being a leader is being able to identify people you can delegate that responsibility to. My wife's going to laugh when I say that because because I don't do it all the time myself, but it is something that you have to kind of take care of. So yeah, time is the biggest sacrifice I've made so far.
What is the best piece of business advice you've ever gotten?
I've had lots over the years. Things like great business is 80% charm, 20% skill, which I just don't agree with. But it was that kind of know your product, know your put together a great team, but make sure that there's a market there to deliver into. Was probably the best bit of advice. But also that make sure that as I said, I've mentioned the lady already, that producer from EA said that, there will come a time when you can't be Papa Sean. You have to be boss Sean, and you have to make sure that you're ready for that detachment. As your company grows, it gets beyond a certain number. Yeah, so that's like having a professional detachment doesn't mean that you don't care. It means that you can't care for everybody the same way you did for a smaller group. But yeah, but making sure that you look after your people the best you can is probably one of the best bits of advice I could take it, because everybody else is built on the shoulders of everybody you surrounded yourself by. So you should take care of them.
What do you think you wish you knew before you started that you know now?
I think there's a kind of misconception I think people have, especially when you're starting, that the business world is full of professional people who know everything. They don't, right? I think it's one of the things that makes it quite intimidating. Is that how can I stand shoulder to shoulder with these people? What if I get invited to a big event or something and I'm standing with somebody who's dead successful? You got to kind of remember that these people most likely started the same way that you did, right? And not to have that chip on your shoulder I've talked about before, especially could come from this country where people are afraid to kind of put their head above the pulpit, but also kind of afraid to, stand out and sing about themselves and be really proud about it.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like it's part of our culture, but it's yeah, it's about having that faith and confidence in yourself, I suppose. You know,
Is your business exactly how you imagine it would be now, or
no,
is anything different? Has anything
no,
changed?
it's not. Um, I moved from being what you would consider to be a hobbyist, right?
Uh,
A hobbyist who was doing something and getting paid for it, in fairness, right? But more like a contract worker, to actually being the person who runs the company that facilitates the work that could be recognized or linked to that hobbyist sort of movement, and trying to keep things as independent as possible, which is quite difficult when you've been acquired by a big American company. But they've
true.
been they've been great. But the fact of the matter is that I've had to adapt my thinking about how a business operates because of scale, right?
Uh,
Because of how many people we have, and it goes across the board. It's not just a matter of my attachment to my team. It's a matter of how we manage HR, how we manage finance, and all the kind of bells and whistles that go into that kind of the cogs that keep the machine going. Um, if you had asked me even a couple of years ago, if I described my job now to me then, I would have went, "See ya." No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't have been up for it. But it's kind of something that's evolved organically, and it's just had to be done. So it's been a really steep learning curve. But yeah, it is rewarding in its own right.
yeah. But so eventually, it's blown up more than you thought it would have.
Our fortunes changed. We have been self-funded. Um, we had some investment prior to the release of our announcement trailer, which was the end of 2018, a long time ago now, actually. And I remember making predictions about how many views it would get. I think the guys were saying 20,000, 60,000, and we're going, yeah. First weekend, 60,000. I said 500,000, go back or go home. And after the first weekend, it was sitting at 10 million. So it's like, but that in itself created a lot of kind of business problems. We had one jobs email, right? And we had just put out a whole pile of jobs, and it just crashed. It died. So we had to, we were, that sounds a bit kind of arrogant to say, but we were kind of victims of our own success. We hadn't prepared. We
You're right.
prepared for failure.
Uh,
We put, that's that Northern Ice chip on my shoulder. We prepared for failure. We are going to have all these press outlets. We're going to do all of this. When we thought a failure, but we didn't look to see what if this is actually, skyrockets, and it did. And we
uh,
weren't prepared for it. We quickly rallied and got around it and
uh,
started putting the systems on. But it was a good surprise. So
100%, 100%. And if you were hired to hire someone on your team, what would you want from them?
that's an easy one. We have a fairly involved hiring process, and it really does focus on two general areas, right? Whether you're a culture fit for the company and your craft skill, basically, right? So if you're a programmer, we have people who are dedicated to those sorts of interviews. We have crafted like a huge question bank of questions for our culture fit. So we've actually put our studio values up on our corporate website, highpixelstudios.com, and we're looking for people who are going to fit the company culture. We are owned, technically not independent anymore, but we have an independent field the way we develop games, right? We're very open. Like the CEO store is open to people who want to talk to him. Like you don't need to make an appointment, right? You can talk to me in Slack. And we have a remote company. It's all fairly kind of loose and open in that regard, you know. So it's your ability to do the job, your ability to fit in the team. That's its most simple. There are like 7 or 8 interviews that you have to go through in order to get into Hypixel. But that is, as I said, get the right people, right? And if you spend the time to start, if you front load that effort, right, then people who are not good enough will fall by the way at some stage of the process. But you end up getting really good solid people who stay with you for the duration, So.
Well, Sean, it was lovely talking to you. Thanks. I appreciate you coming on and talking to me. It was very insightful. I appreciate it.
Connor, absolute gentleman. Thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you. Thank yourself.
Cheers.
See you later.
All the
Bye.
best. Bye.